Welcome back to Equity Logic. Today's episode is a little different. We're not exploring just one topic, but three interconnected landscapes. From the existential threat of nuclear weapons, to the Epstein Files and the dark side of philanthropy, to the giving pledge and the cultural experiment of giving away half your fortune. Buffett brings his signature honesty and insight to each one. How about this for a thought experiment? The same nuclear energy that powers cities could also destroy them in an instant. Today, we're diving into the complex and chilling reality of nuclear weapons and the geopolitical tensions that keep them relevant.
That's a heavy but important topic. It's one of those things that feels like it's always in the background, but when you stop to think about it, the implications are staggering. Where do we even begin?
Let's start with Warren Buffett's perspective, which I found fascinating. He's someone who spent his life analyzing risk and uncertainty. Yet when it comes to nuclear threats, he openly admits he doesn't have the answers. That level of humility from someone like him is striking, don't you think?
It really is. Buffett's reflections on nuclear weapons and the Middle East are especially compelling because he rarely talks about these topics publicly. He spent decades mastering probabilities and outcomes, but even he acknowledges the unpredictability of nuclear threats. What stood out to you the most?
For me, it was his comparison between the nuclear landscape of the past and today. He talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis, when there were just two nuclear powers, the US and the Soviet Union. Even then, people were terrified, hiding under their desks during drills. And now, with countries like North Korea and Iran in the mix, the uncertainty has grown exponentially.
That's such a vivid image, isn't it? People hiding under desks, even when the leaders at the time, Kennedy and Khrushchev, were relatively rational actors. Now, we're dealing with a much more fragmented and unpredictable landscape. It's no wonder Buffett feels the stakes are higher than ever.
Exactly. And he made an interesting point about the types of leaders who might have their fingers on the nuclear button today. He talked about the danger of someone who's cornered, whether it's a leader facing personal disgrace, terminal illness, or some other form of desperation. That's a terrifying thought. Someone with nothing to lose making a catastrophic decision.
It's a chilling scenario, but it's not far-fetched. Decisions about nuclear weapons are ultimately made by individuals, and individuals are fallible. That's what makes this issue so complex. It's not just about policies or treaties, it's about human behavior.
And that's why Buffett brought up the historical context of the Einstein-Szilard letter. Back in 1939, the fear was that Nazi Germany would develop nuclear weapons first. It was a rational fear at the time, and it led to the Manhattan Project and the eventual creation of the atomic bomb. But as Buffett pointed out, once that genie was out of the bottle, there was no putting it back.
The Einstein-Szilard letter is such a pivotal moment in history. It's fascinating to think about how it all hinged on Einstein's signature. Szilard couldn't get through to Roosevelt on his own, but he knew that if Einstein, with his immense credibility, signed the letter, it would be taken seriously. And it was. That one letter essentially set the course for the nuclear age.
And yet, as Buffett noted, the irony is that the bomb wasn't used on Germany. It was used on Japan. It's a stark reminder of how the intentions behind actions can evolve in ways that are unpredictable and, in some cases, tragic. Buffett's reflection on this, how we've never truly learned to live with the existence of nuclear weapons, really stuck with me.
It's true. We've had decades to grapple with this reality, and yet the existential threat remains as potent as ever. Buffett's comment about the Earth's life expectancy no longer being what it was when he was a child, when he was told the sun would burn out in 4.5 billion years, was such a poignant way to frame it. The idea that human actions could drastically shorten that timeline is sobering.
It really is. And his recounting of the near misses we've had over the years, like the incident with the training tape being mistaken for a real nuclear attack, shows just how precarious the situation has been at times. It's almost miraculous that we've avoided disaster so far.
That incident he mentioned from 1979 is terrifying. Imagine being in a position where a simple human error, like inserting the wrong tape, could potentially trigger a nuclear war. It's a stark reminder of how fragile these systems are, and how much trust we place in them.
And yet, as Buffett pointed out, it's not about assigning blame. He acknowledged that his own father, who was in Congress at the time, would have voted in favor of developing nuclear weapons. It was seen as the right decision at the time, given the context of World War II and the fear of a Nazi nuclear bomb. But the consequences of that decision have been far-reaching and irreversible.
That's the thing about decisions of that magnitude. They're made with the best intentions in the moment, but their ripple effects can last for generations. And now we're in a position where we're not just dealing with the existence of these weapons, but also the potential for them to fall into the hands of unpredictable or unstable actors.
Exactly. And that's why Buffett's comments on Iran were so striking. He didn't claim to have a solution, but he was clear that an Iran with nuclear weapons would be far more challenging to deal with than an Iran without them. It's a simple yet powerful statement that underscores the stakes.
It's a reminder of how high the stakes are in diplomacy and international relations. The idea that a single decision, whether to intervene, to negotiate, or to take a hardline stance, could have such profound implications is daunting. And yet, as Buffett admitted, there's no easy answer.
That's what makes this issue so complex. Even someone like Buffett, who's spent his life analyzing risks and making decisions, acknowledges the difficulty of finding a solution. His anecdote about asking a former president whether they would order a nuclear counterattack if the Soviets launched first was particularly haunting. The president's response, that they thought about it every day, speaks volumes about the weight of that responsibility.
It really does. The idea of having just 10 minutes to decide the fate of millions of lives is almost unimaginable. And yet, that's the reality for leaders who have to navigate these scenarios. It's a level of pressure that most of us can't even begin to comprehend.
And it's not just about the immediate decision, it's about the long-term consequences as well. As Buffett said, we can't uninvent what's already out there. The existence of these weapons is a reality we have to live with, and that reality becomes even more precarious as more nations seek to acquire them.
It's a sobering thought. But I think what makes Buffett's perspective so compelling is his honesty. He doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he's willing to confront the questions. And in a world where so many people shy away from these difficult conversations, that's incredibly important.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even the smartest, most accomplished individuals don't have all the answers. And that's okay. What matters is that we keep asking the questions, keep having the conversations, and keep striving for solutions, even when they seem out of reach.
Well said. It's a heavy topic, but one that's worth discussing. If nothing else, it reminds us of the importance of vigilance, diplomacy, and the need to approach these issues with both humility and urgency.
Couldn't agree more. Here's hoping that these conversations lead to progress, however incremental it may be. The nuclear threat in the previous weighed heavily on me. The thought that generations of us could live with the possibility of total annihilation was truly chilling. But here's the thing. The next topic isn't about state-level destruction. It's about one man's web of manipulation. Same power dynamics, same trust betrayed. But this time inside the world of philanthropy, where we expect the most good. Did you know that the Epstein Files contain over 3.5 million pages of communications? That's not just a scandal. It's a staggering look into how power and manipulation operate on a massive scale.
That number is mind-blowing. It's like peeling back the layers of a story that just keeps getting darker and more complex. And Warren Buffett's reaction to all of this really adds another dimension, especially given his role in philanthropy.
Exactly. Buffett's perspective is fascinating because he's not just an observer. He's someone who's been deeply involved in the world of foundations and large-scale giving. His use of the word astounding to describe Epstein's ability to manipulate people really stuck with me. It's not every day you hear someone like Buffett express that level of shock.
Right? And it wasn't just shock at Epstein himself, but at the sheer scale of his schemes. Buffett talked about how Epstein exploited people's weaknesses, whether it was their desire for power, wealth, or even something as basic as human connection. It's chilling to think about how calculated it all was.
And what's even more unsettling is how Buffett reflected on his own good fortune of living in Omaha, far removed from the New York social circles where Epstein operated. He joked about how his habit of taking gag photos could have easily been misused in those environments, but there's a serious undertone there. It's a reminder of how proximity to power can pull people into dangerous situations.
That part really stood out to me too. It's almost like Buffett was acknowledging how easy it is to get caught up in something just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And his relief at not being part of that world says a lot about how he views the risks of those social dynamics.
Absolutely. But what really struck me was how he connected this to the broader implications for philanthropy. He drew a parallel to the 1969 revisions to foundation laws, predicting that Congress might revisit the rules governing philanthropic organizations in light of public outrage over the Epstein files. That's a huge statement.
It really is. The 1969 changes he referenced were a response to concerns about how foundations were operating. And it seems like we might be heading toward a similar moment now. Public anger has a way of forcing action, especially when it comes to institutions that wield as much power as these foundations do.
And Buffett didn't shy away from pointing out the power dynamics at play. He talked about how foundations have significant influence in Washington, which can be both a strength and a liability. It's a double-edged sword. Philanthropy can do immense good, but it also raises questions about accountability and transparency.
That's such an important point. And it ties into Buffett's own philosophy on trust, which he reiterated during the conversation. His approach of doubt them, don't hire them, trust them, don't doubt them is interesting, but it also leaves room for blind spots. He admitted that he didn't ask probing questions as a trustee of the Gates Foundation, which is telling.
It really is. His candor about not knowing certain things, like the details of the Gates marital issues, or the hiring of controversial figures like Boris Nikolic, was refreshing but also concerning. It highlights how even someone as savvy as Buffett can find themselves in a position of limited oversight.
And his decision not to discuss the Epstein files with Bill Gates was another fascinating aspect. On one hand, it's a strategic move to avoid any legal entanglements or accusations of complicity. On the other hand, it's a stark example of how complex and fraught these situations can become, even among close collaborators.
It's such a delicate balance. Buffett clearly wants to distance himself from anything potentially damaging, but he's also maintaining his commitment to philanthropy. He reiterated that he doesn't regret his donations to the Gates Foundation and still believes in the good it has done. Yet, he's also in a wait-and-see mode, observing how things unfold before making future decisions.
And that's a prudent approach. The Gates Foundation has undeniably had a massive impact on global health and other areas, but the revelations from the Epstein files cast a shadow that's hard to ignore. Buffett's willingness to continue his donations while staying vigilant speaks to his belief in the foundation's mission, but it's clear he's grappling with the complexities of the situation.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the Gates Foundation. It's about the broader implications for philanthropy as a whole. Buffett's prediction of potential congressional hearings on foundations is a reminder that these issues extend far beyond any one organization. It's about how we, as a society, hold these powerful entities accountable.
And that accountability is crucial. Foundations wield enormous influence, not just through their financial resources, but also through their ability to shape public policy and societal priorities. If the Epstein files lead to greater scrutiny and transparency in the philanthropic sector, that could ultimately be a positive outcome, even if it's born out of a deeply troubling situation.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that crises often serve as catalysts for change, even if the change is slow and painful. Buffett's reflections on human nature, trust, and the need for oversight offer valuable lessons, not just for philanthropy, but for anyone in a position of power or influence.
Absolutely. And as we continue to learn more from the Epstein files and their fallout, it'll be interesting to see how these lessons are applied. Will we see a shift in how foundations operate? Will there be new regulations or changes in public perception? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. This is a moment of reckoning for philanthropy.
It really is. And as Buffett said, the sheer scale of the Epstein Files, 3.5 million pages, is astounding. There's so much we still don't know. And as more information comes to light, it will undoubtedly shape the conversation around these issues.
Without a doubt. It's a heavy topic, but an important one. And I think Buffett's perspective, with all its complexities and contradictions, offers a lot of food for thought. It's a reminder that even the most well-intentioned efforts can be fraught with challenges, and that transparency and accountability are more important than ever.
I completely agree. This conversation has given us a lot to think about, and I believe this is just the beginning. As the story unfolds, there's much more to explore. Let's take a break and move on to the next topic. Welcome back. Let's discuss the final chapter: money, conscience, and the most difficult compromise. Trying to heal the wounds inflicted by capitalism while still believing in it. Can we do it? How about this for a thought? The wealthiest people in the world are pledging to give away half their fortunes, but it's not legally binding. And yet, they're actually doing it. What does that say about the power of influence over obligation?
That's such an interesting way to frame it. It's almost counterintuitive, right? You'd think without legal enforcement, people might back out or not follow through. But Warren Buffett's take on this really flips that assumption on its head.
Exactly. Buffett's perspective on the giving pledge is fascinating because he doesn't just see it as a philanthropic initiative, he sees it as a cultural shift. He talks about how it's not just about the money, it's about changing the way society views wealth and responsibility. And what's even more surprising is how much he credits Bill Gates for making it a global movement.
That's one of the things that stood out to me, too. Buffett openly admits that he's not the guy who's going to travel the world promoting this idea. He even jokes about being lazy in that regard. But Gates, with his energy and drive, has taken the pledge to countries and cultures where philanthropy isn't necessarily a norm. That's a huge deal.
It really is. And what's so compelling is that Buffett doesn't shy away from acknowledging the limitations of the pledge. He's upfront about the fact that it's not legally binding and that people can back out at any time. But despite that, he's seen participants give more than they might have otherwise. That says a lot about the power of social accountability, doesn't it?
It really does. And he even points out that some of the objections to the pledge come from a very human place. For example, he mentions that some wealthy mothers worry about becoming targets of media scrutiny if their wealth becomes too public. It's such a relatable concern, even if it's on a billionaire scale.
Right. And then there's the criticism from certain tech billionaires who've dismissed the pledge as woke or performative. But Buffett's response to that is classic Buffett: calm, pragmatic, and focused on the bigger picture. He basically says, if you don't like it, don't participate. It's such a simple yet powerful way to address the criticism.
And it's not just about addressing critics, it's about staying true to the core idea. Buffett emphasizes that the pledge isn't about judging how people made their money. Whether it's tech, liquor, or farming, what matters to him is how they choose to use that wealth to give back. That's such a refreshing perspective in a world that often gets caught up in moralizing about wealth.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes Buffett's approach so unique. He's not interested in policing the past. He's focused on the future and the potential for positive impact. It's a perspective that feels both pragmatic and deeply ethical, which is a rare combination.
And yet, he's not naive about the challenges. He acknowledges that the rate of new signings to the pledge has slowed, but he's still optimistic about the impact it's had. He even shares some lighter moments, like the guy who joined the pledge just because he wanted to have lunch with Becky Quick. It's a reminder that even among billionaires, you get all kinds of personalities.
That anecdote was such a great moment of levity. But then Buffett brings it back to the bigger picture, noting that while the pledge isn't perfect, it's still a meaningful step toward redefining what it means to be wealthy in today's world. And that's a recurring theme with Buffett: this balance between optimism and realism.
And that balance is so evident in his reflections on capitalism. He calls America a world wonder and acknowledges the efficiency of capitalism, but he's deeply troubled by the growing wealth gap. It's this dual recognition that capitalism works, but it's also flawed and in need of recalibration.
That part really resonated with me. He talks about how the disparities in wealth and opportunity are too great, even as he acknowledges that capitalism has brought unprecedented prosperity. It's a nuanced take that feels especially relevant in today's world.
And he ties this back to the political landscape, which he describes as more polarized than ever. He's clearly frustrated by the inability of Democrats and Republicans to work together on anything, and he sees this gridlock as a major obstacle to addressing the very issues he's concerned about, like wealth inequality.
It's interesting to hear him talk about his own political evolution in this context. He started out as a Republican, influenced by his father, but later shifted to the Democratic Party. Now, he identifies as an independent, which feels like a reflection of his broader worldview: pragmatic, independent, and focused on solutions rather than ideology.
That evolution is so telling, especially when you consider his age and experience. At 95, he's seen decades of political and economic change, and he's still willing to adapt his views. That kind of intellectual humility is rare, especially in someone of his stature.
It really is. And I think that humility is also evident in how he talks about his relationship with Bill Gates. He's candid about the fact that they don't have as much meaningful interaction as they used to, but he still speaks with such gratitude for the thoughtfulness Gates has shown him over the years.
And then there's the Epstein angle, which he addresses in a way that's both forthright and cautious. He's clear that he had no involvement with Epstein, and he expresses relief that Gates never introduced them. But he also acknowledges the complexities and the need for transparency in situations like this.
That part of the conversation felt like a window into Buffett's broader philosophy on trust and accountability. He talks about how he's always trusted the people he's worked with, whether it's Gates or his own children, and how that trust has generally served him well. But he's also aware of the risks and the potential for things to go wrong.
And that awareness extends to his views on philanthropy as a whole. He points out that the structures supporting charitable giving, like tax deductions and donor-advised funds, are worth scrutinizing more frequently. It's a reminder that even something as seemingly benevolent as philanthropy can have its own set of challenges and blind spots.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Buffett such a compelling figure. He's not just operating at the level of individual action, he's also thinking about the systems and structures that shape those actions. It's a rare combination of personal insight and systemic awareness.
And yet, he's still so approachable in the way he communicates these ideas. Even when he's talking about something as complex as capitalism or philanthropy, he has this way of breaking it down into simple, relatable terms. Like when he says, "For God's sake, just give away half of it." It's such a straightforward, almost folksy way of framing what could otherwise be a very abstract concept.
That's so true. And I think it's part of why his message resonates with so many people, even outside the world of finance. He has this ability to connect with people on a human level, whether he's talking about money, politics, or just life in general.
And as the conversation wraps up, you can feel the weight of everything he's shared. Becky Quick even comments on how much more there is to discuss, but they're out of time. It's a poignant reminder that even someone like Buffett, with all his wisdom and experience, is ultimately constrained by the same limits as the rest of us: time. That moment really hit me too. It's a reminder to make the most of the time we have, to focus on what matters, and to keep asking the big questions, even if we don't have all the answers. Absolutely. And if there's one takeaway from this conversation, it's that the pursuit of understanding, whether it's about wealth, responsibility, or the human condition, is a lifelong journey. Buffett embodies that pursuit in such a profound way.
He really does. And I think that's what makes his reflections so valuable. Not just for billionaires or investors, but for anyone trying to navigate the complexities of modern life. Okay? The episode ends, but Buffett's questions don't. Nuclear weapons can't be uninvented. Philanthropy needs more transparency. And the distribution of wealth remains capitalism's most painful nerve.
What strikes me is that Buffett never pretends to have the answers. He once said that as a child he was told the sun would burn out in 4.5 billion years. But now he's not so sure humans won't shorten that timeline themselves.
And yet, he keeps giving. He keeps encouraging others to give. He keeps believing that conversation matters more than silence. Maybe that's the real takeaway. Stay humble in the face of unsolvable problems, but never stop asking the hard questions. Thanks for listening to Equity Logic. If you have thoughts on any of the topics, nuclear risk, foundation reform, or the Giving Pledge, let us know.
Until next time, may we all live clearly in this brilliant, fragile world.
Take care.